Hey, truth seekers, welcome back. Zach here. It's October 18th, 2016. This video is a follow-up on the Gematria lesson I gave last week. In case you missed that video, I'll link it in the description. I taught about why Gematria is the most essential language to know when decoding propaganda in the mainstream media. Today, we're going to use the example of President Obama addressing Donald Trump. He asked Donald Trump to stop complaining and whining about the election being rigged. Notice the story. It's President Obama with the phrase "stop whining" emphasized. As I taught last week, anytime the mainstream media emphasizes a phrase, there is coded gematria within. So what I'm going to link down in the description also is this calculator. The most helpful methods on this calculator are English reduction, which we're going to use. Stop whining in gematria sums to 64. Last week in the lesson I taught, we also talked about 64 because this is one of the most important numbers to the gang of people who run the media, which are the Zionists. This is the number of Israel, Zion, Thelema, 64. The product of 8 times 8, 64, very symbolic. It's in the I Ching. There's 64 spaces on the chessboard. This is a special number. The Civil Rights Act happened in 1964, and Barack Obama, his name is Barack Hussein Obama, so we're told. Barack Hussein Obama equals 64. His nickname is Barry. Sometimes they call him Barry. Barry is also 64 if you use the English ordinal method. And again, the difference in these methods is in the English ordinal, you use the alphabetic order. B is 2, A is 1, R is 18, Y is 25. You add up the word using the alphabetic order. In the reduction method, you compress each letter to a single digit. B is already 2, so it stays 2. A is 1. R is 18. 1 plus 8 becomes 9. Y is 25. 2 plus 5 becomes 7. So that's how this calculator works. There's a rhyme and a reason to it. It's the alphabetic order. It's simple addition. The name Barry the small way also sums to 28, just like Israel. And again, 64 is the number of Israel, Zion, Thelema, the occult religion that's about essentially do whatever you want. The people who run our media, every day they bombard us with agenda, lies, propaganda to steer us. This is the definition of do what thou wilt. Treat the world as fools, lie to them, give them crooked politicians that have sold out for money and fame to mislead, deceive, capture the imaginations, inspire hope, only to disappoint. So anyway, we'll watch Obama and his words in just a moment. I want to show you a little bit more about this news coming today. Today is October 18th, 2016. It's a date with 64 numerology. Again, tying into Stop Whining, Barack Hussein Obama, civil rights. The name for the false Jews, which are the Zionist Jews who are in Israel, the name for them is the synagogue of Satan in the Bible, which honestly was likely written by them in a mocking, controlling sense. It says in the end times, the false Jews, the synagogue of Satan will rule. Well, in this world, the media, it controls the masses. The media is truly the God for most people. Most people are responding to what they're seeing in the media. News, TV, movies, if it's coming through the screen, for most people, that's what's controlling them. The motto of Thelema is do what thou wilt, 64. Special numbers. Today's date numerology, 64. It's also a date with 44 numerology. Obama's the 44th president, elected 44 years after the Civil Rights Act in 2008. The word hope equals 44. He ran on hope. All throughout history, that's been a very fateful number, 44. The faces of the Civil Rights Act, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, both men who were killed by the number 44. The word kill equals 44. The first president to ever die in office died on April 4th, 4-4. It's the same day Martin Luther King Jr. was shot. This other emphasized phrase that CNN has for the top of their story, whining before the game's even over, gematria of 157 like United States, and it's no mistake that he used the word game. We live in a big game. This is a game we're born into. We are treated like pieces on the chessboard, on the checkerboard. You know? It's no mistake that Obama referred to this as a game today. It is a game. And it's a game that we need to put an end to. We weren't here to be played with. You know what I mean? That's what's happening to us. We're all getting played with. And most people are getting played by this news media and characters such as Barack Obama. Real quick, I want you to notice that CNN posted this at 2:22. Look at this. They got the clip starting at 12:22, that 222 sequence. In numerology, which these people are all about, 2 can represent division. And with all of these stories, they know that they impact different people different ways. And the purpose at the end of the day is to divide people over their beliefs, their political affiliations, their cultural lifelong programming, which in this big nation is very different depending on where you come from. So anyway, let's listen to Obama in his own words. Just remember, Obama is a puppet. His real name is not Barack Hussein Obama. He's an agent. He's always been an agent. His entire political record is horrible, which I was explaining to people in 2008. He's always had a horrible voting record. Everyone thought he was going to be this great agent of change. Well, his voting record showed that he was hardcore establishment, hardcore big bank, military. Anyway, these are what the agents are all about. They're able to capture the imagination, the emotions of the masses, make them believe in them, and then so often disappoint again and again. Here we go with Barry O.
I have never seen in my lifetime or in modern political history any presidential candidate trying to discredit the elections and the election process before votes have even taken place. It's unprecedented. It happens to be based on no facts. Every expert, regardless of political party, regardless of ideology, conservative or liberal, who has ever examined these issues in a serious way will tell you that instances of significant voter fraud are not to be found. That
this has always been what Obama's been about. When he first came on the scene speaking at the Democratic Convention in 2004, where the night of, all mainstream media asked, could that be the first black president? And then 4 years later, sure enough. But that night, his speech was about, the government, it's not so bad. People need to just, get over their differences. The past is water under the bridge. Let's just move on. He was saying this in a time where our government had attacked us just years before on 9/11. We had started illegal wars. We were spying on our own citizens, and it was becoming more and more mainstream and out in the open. And Obama just came along and said, let's just, it's not all that bad. Let's just move on. And everyone said, ooh, I like that guy. I like his attitude. I like the way he speaks to me. Now look at him, saying there's no instances of voter fraud? What happened in 2000 in Florida, where the man who won, his brother was the governor and his father was the former president? I was 17 years old. I couldn't even vote then. But I remember in Washington State, where I was living for a whole week, in our history class, our current events class, we were talking about in our own paper from our local area, not the New York Times, the one written for Southwest Washington where I was, that paper talking about how the whole election was going to come down to Florida. Florida was going to decide the election. Writing about this a whole week before the election, I didn't understand how they could, have it narrowed down to one state. Well, sure enough, what happened that night? Gore at first was announced the winner. Gore won Florida. Gore won the election. Then they said, wait, it's too close to call. And the next thing you know, the next morning, George W. Bush was the president. And then if you've ever read about all that went on there with the ballots, and I mean, that's just That's just one example that's blaring it in our face. But really, it's always election fraud. That's why we have the quote even in our own history books. It doesn't matter who votes, it only matters who counts the votes. And the people who count the votes, they're the people who control your media and your government and use them as puppets. You know, they're the puppeteers. The people who run the show are the industrialists, the bankers. They own people like Obama and Hillary. All of you who think, you know, these families are so like gangster and mafioso, they're just the puppets. They're the front men. The people behind them, you know, they're the real demons. These people are just their puppet sellouts. And here's how they tell you. This is how they treat you. Obama just comes up here and he even has like a con man face on right now. You can just see it. It's not coming through in his body language. He can't bring it like he did in 2008. You know? You can only lie for so long. We all have souls. But anyway, Obama. Here he is telling you there's never been any voter fraud. You know? Everything's just clean and honest and pure here in America. Here we go.
Keep in mind, elections are run by state and local officials, which means that there are places like Florida, for example, where you've got a Republican governor who's a Republican appointees are going to be running and monitoring a whole bunch of these election sites. The notion that somehow if Mr. Trump loses Florida, it's because of those people that you have to watch out for, that is both irresponsible and, by the way, doesn't really show the kind of leadership and toughness that you'd want out of a president. You start whining before the game's even over.
So listen to Obama telling you to trust your government. I mean, it's the authority in the government that does your votes. They're so honest and pure. Of course you can trust them. And what's Obama talking about leadership? What has Obama really done? You know, he's just continued on everything the George W. Bush administration did. All the Obama supporters thought they were getting something different. This man just came in and carried on all the wrongdoing. One of the only things that I'm aware of that Obama's done that's positive for this country, and it wasn't even enough, but he reduced crack sentencing laws from the life sentences they were down to a maximum of something like 20 years. But still, 20 years for doing some drugs because you're poor? I mean, the only reason people smoke crack is because they don't have money and they want to escape this world. And a lot of people want to escape because this world is torture. Because of the people who rule over us and what's been done to us our whole lives. And what's been done to us as a people and why we're so awful to each other. So 20 years for smoking crack, I mean, that's ridiculous. But before, you could have served way more than that. So, you know, I just want to give Obama some credit. There's one thing I'm aware of that was somewhat positive. It wasn't enough, but it was a step in the right direction. What else have you done, Obama? Carried on all the wrongdoing. And you know what? I need to make another point. A lot of you who are out here seeking truth, a lot of you woke up when Obama became the president. That concerns me, honestly, when you write these things. It makes me think that somewhere inside you, what made you wake up was a sense of racism. Because before Obama, we had a president that was, you know, just god-awful. And so was Obama, don't get me wrong. But I mean, he was just so bad. And the things he said were just so absurd. Donald Trump is George W. Bush accelerated. But, you know, just recognize what it is. All of you who were just passive when Bush was the president or so hateful of Obama, it just doesn't make any sense. It shows you don't have any clue of what's going on. These people are all just puppet stooges that follow in the footsteps of what came before them. Telling everybody this in 2008. They said I was crazy. You think Obama's the same as Bush? Yeah, have you seen his voting record? It's the exact same. Here we go.
If whenever things are going badly for you and you lose, you start blaming somebody else, then you don't have what it takes to be in this job. But the larger point that I want to emphasize here is that there is no...
Body language is key. I feel like Obama's worn out. He looks worn out to me. Did you see that? This job. What's that mean? What is this job? What is this job back here? Oh, man.
Serious person out there who would suggest somehow that you could even rig America's elections.
It would be impossible, right?
Because they're so decentralized. and the numbers of votes involved. There's no evidence that that has happened in the past, or that.
You know, just think, is our voting system so decentralized? Something I've always thought that was amazing is how fast they get all of this information from the polls and all the voting stations to the TV stations. We live out here on the West Coast. Normally, elections are already decided by the time we're eating dinner out here on the West Coast. It's like, wow, you know? The Bush-Gore election, that was an exception. Obama's re-election, how fast was that? How fast was that? I was out on a date that night. We were going to eat out at a restaurant and watch the election. I mean, the election was over before we even got our food. Couldn't even believe it. No, it's not decentralized. It's very fast. It's amazing how fast it is. And it's because it's all a show. You know, the media, the government, they're run by the game. And this is all an illusion they give us. Barack Obama, you know, he's just a puppet, just like the rest of them.
There are instances in which that will happen this time. And so I'd advise Mr. Trump to stop whining and go try to make his case to get votes.
All right, so there it is. Another lesson completed. If you missed last week's video, I do a better job explaining Gematria and its relevance. But last week it was Michelle and Hillary with the same numbers coded. And as I said, they code these numbers all the time. Till next time, true